The sheriff had already put the rope over the courthouse beam when the woman in the black traveling dress walked through the doors and said, "Before you hang him, read the paper in his pocket." Every man in the room turned. Silas Rourke stood beneath the beam with his wrists tied behind him. Blood dried along one cheek and a split lip swelling over his teeth. He was the largest man in the room, broad through the shoulders, gray at the temples, and quiet in the way of men who had spent too many years learning that anger was expensive. The sheriff, Tom Bell, held the rope. Across the room, Silas Rourke watched from beside the stove. He was Elias's older brother and owner of the Red Mesa Ranch, a spread of dry pasture and cottonwood bottomland 2 miles west of town. At 41, Silas had the hard face of a man who had buried more than he spoke about. His left hand rested on the butt of his revolver, but he had not drawn it. The woman walked straight to the sheriff. She was perhaps 30, with dark hair pinned beneath a plain black hat, a dust-stained traveling coat, and a small leather case tucked beneath one arm. "Who are you?" the sheriff asked. "June Mercer." Silas frowned. He knew the name. Everyone in Coyote Wells knew it. June Mercer had been the telegraph clerk for 6 years before the station closed. She had also kept accounts for half the merchants in town after her husband died. She was known for a sharp memory, a steady hand, and an irritating habit of reading every document before signing it. The sheriff glanced at Silas. "She says she knows something about the cattle theft," June looked at Elias. "I know he did not steal those horses." Murmur moved through the room. Silas stepped forward. "You came all the way out here to defend my brother?" "No," June said. "I came because the man who paid for the arrest is about to take your ranch." Silas stopped. For the first time that morning, his expression changed. The sheriff lowered the rope. June opened the leather case. Inside was a folded telegraph form, a county map, and a photograph of 6 horses standing beside a fence. "I received this telegram 3 nights ago," she said. "It was sent from Fort Logan by a deputy surveyor named Amos Vale. He said he had proof that the western boundary of Red Mesa was being moved on county records." Silas stared at the paper. "Amos Vale has been dead for 11 days. I know." "Then who sent the telegram?" June looked toward the courthouse window. "That is what I came here to find out." The sheriff took the paper. His face hardened. At the bottom was a line of numbers, a date, and 3 initials, T. Bell, the sheriff's own initials. He looked up sharply. "I never sent this." "I didn't say you did," June replied. "I said someone wants you to believe that you did." Silas looked from the telegram to his brother. "What does this have to do with Elias?" June folded the paper. "The horses found in his barn were branded with the Rourke mark, but the photograph proves those same horses were alive 2 days after the theft. They were moved north through Dry Creek, and Dry Creek runs through land your family has been fighting over for 20 years. Silas said nothing. His father had claimed that strip of ground when Silas was 16. A survey line had placed the watercourse inside the Rourke boundary. Then another survey had placed it outside. The matter had been argued, postponed, and forgotten, until now. Elias goes back to his cell. Silas looked at June. "Who paid you?" "No one." "Then why risk coming here?" June's expression softened, but only slightly. "Because my husband was killed 2 winters ago after he refused to falsify a freight ledger." Silas watched her carefully. "And you think this is connected?" "I think men who lie on paper eventually start lying with guns." Nobody spoke. Then a horse screamed outside. All 3 men turned. The rancher crossed the room. "What happened?" "Barns burning." Silas did not ask another question. He ran. June followed. By the time they reached Red Mesa, black smoke was rolling over the cottonwoods. The north barn was burning from the inside. Men formed a bucket line, but the wind kept pushing flames across the roof. Silas charged through the smoke toward the tack room. "My records!" June grabbed his arm. "Not the records." He turned. She pointed toward the far side of the barn. The fire started near the office. "If someone wanted your papers, they would burn that first." Silas stared. Then he understood. The old water ledger was kept beneath the floor of the tack room. He ran there instead. They found the trapdoor open. Inside, the ledger was gone. But something else remained, a brass key. June picked it up. "What does this open?" Silas looked at it for a long moment. "My father's old survey chest. Where is it?" "Buried beneath the house." June looked toward the burning barn. "Then whoever took the ledger may not know what he really needs." The roof gave a violent crack. Silas grabbed June and pulled her clear as burning timber crashed behind them. She stumbled against his chest. For 1 second they stood close, enough for her to hear his breathing. Then Silas released. "Her? You're going back to town?" "No. This is no place for you." June wiped soot from her cheek. "That is the first foolish thing you've said today." He almost smiled, almost by sunset. The barn was a black skeleton. The cattle had been moved. The surviving tools were scattered across the yard. The ranch smelled of wet ash and scorched pine. Silas took June into the kitchen. His brother Elias sat at the table. Now released on his own recognizance, he looked at June with suspicion. "I don't like strangers." "Neither do I," she said. Elias grunted. "Silas, place the brass key on the table. We have until morning," June frowned. "Until morning for what?" Silas leaned back. "The county judge is meeting with Harlan Pike at 8. June knew the name. Harlan Pike owned the largest mercantile in Coyote Wells. 3 freight wagons and enough debt notes to control half the town. What is he asking for? "My western grazing land." "On what grounds?" Silas looked at Elias. "Cattle theft, arson, trespass, and a survey filed this morning saying half the ranch belongs to the county." June slowly unfolded the map. The new boundary line ran directly through the spring, not the house, not the barn, the spring. Her eyes narrowed. "Pike doesn't want your pasture." Silas stared at her. "He wants your water." Knock sounded at the door. No one moved. Then came another. 3 slow knocks. Elias reached for his gun. Silas raised a hand. "Stay!" He opened the door. "No!" One stood outside. Only a small wooden box sat on the porch. Silas brought it inside. The brass key fit the lock. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a silver watch, and a child's faded photograph. June picked up the paper. Her face changed. "What?" She read it again. Silas watched her. "June?" She looked up. "The surveyor who sent the telegram didn't die 11 days ago." Silas went still. "How do you know?" "Because this is his handwriting." She turned the paper around. At the bottom were 6 words. "The original map is under the chapel." Elias stood. "What chapel?" June looked toward the dark hills beyond the ranch. The old mission at Dry Creek. Silas's jaw tightened. That mission had been abandoned for 15 years, and the road to it passed directly through Harlan Pike's newly claimed land. Before anyone could speak, a gunshot cracked in the distance. Then another. A horse screamed from the corral. Silas ran for the door. June grabbed the silver watch on. Its back was an engraving she had seen once before, her husband's initials, J.M. She stared at it in disbelief. Someone had just connected her dead husband to the same secret that was threatening the Rourke ranch, and whoever had left that box knew she would understand. Silas had the horses saddled before the second gunman reached the fence. June came out carrying her leather case and wearing a man's wool coat over her black dress. "You're staying here," Silas said. "You still haven't learned." "Learned? What?" That telling me what I am going to do doesn't make it happen." Elias gave a short laugh. They rode to Dry Creek before dawn. Behind the altar, they found an iron ring beneath a loose stone. Silas lifted the slab, and June pulled out a wax-sealed map. The boundary lines were 20 years old. So was the secret. A proposed railroad spur ran through the western hills directly toward the Rourke Spring. "The railroad never came through," Silas said. "It was supposed to," June replied, "and the spring was the reason." Before they could study the map, horses thundered outside. 5 riders entered the clearing. Harlan Pike dismounted. "Search the chapel," he ordered. "Then burn it." Silas reached for his gun, but June caught his wrist. Not yet. They hid behind the broken wall while Pike's men searched. Pike was not looking for land. He was looking for proof. When the riders finally left, Silas looked at June. "You were right. I know. That may be the most irritating thing about you." She smiled. They returned to Red Mesa by another trail. Elias was waiting with a seizure order. "The judge came early," he said. "Pike claims the spring is on county land." June read the document. The new boundary cut straight through the water source. "This isn't about your pasture," she said. "It's about control of the spring." Silas looked at the old map. "And the railroad." June nodded. Then she remembered the silver watch. She opened its back. A narrow strip of paper was hidden inside. 3 names, a date, and 1 sentence. "The freight ledgers are buried under the old water tower." June's hands trembled. Her dead husband, James, had once worked freight accounts. 2 winters earlier, he had been killed after refusing to falsify a shipment record. Silas saw her face. "This connects to him." "I think so." They rode to the abandoned water tower. Beneath its cracked foundation, they found an iron box. Inside were freight ledgers showing goods purchased, loaded, and never delivered. The missing supplies had been sold through Pike's company. The final ledger was worse. It listed payments to the sheriff, the judge, railroad agents, and 1 payment under the name James Mercer. June went pale. Silas turned the page. Beneath James's name was a notation, "Refused. Payment returned." "He wasn't taking their money," Silas said. June closed her eyes. He was exposing them. That was when they heard horses. Pike's men had found them. Silas grabbed the ledgers. "Run!" They escaped through the Dry Creek bed and reached Red Mesa after dark. But Pike was already there. The sheriff stood beside the judge. 6 armed men surrounded the house. Silas walked onto the porch. "You're trespassing." The sheriff raised the seizure order. "Not anymore." Pike stepped forward. "Give me the map, Rourke. Sign the ranch over, and your brother walks free." Silas looked at June. She shook her head. "No." Pike laughed. "You're out of choices." June opened her leather case. "I sent copies of these ledgers to the territorial office this afternoon." Pike's smile disappeared. "You're lying." "No. And if anything happens to us, they know exactly where to look." Pike drew his pistol. The first shot shattered the porch rail. Silas shoved June behind a post and fired back. Elias returned fire from the doorway. The sheriff ducked. The judge fell behind a wagon. Pike ran toward the barn. Silas followed. June saw him disappear inside. Then she noticed the old hay pulley hanging above the loft. She ran after them. Pike had Silas pinned beside the hayloft. "You don't understand what this ranch is worth," Pike shouted. "I understand what you're willing to kill for," Silas answered. Pike fired. The bullet struck a beam. June pulled the release rope. The loaded pulley swung across the loft and smashed Pike's gun hand. His pistol fell. He stumbled backward and caught the edge of the loft. Silas stood above him. Pike looked up. "Help me!" For 1 hard second, Silas did nothing. Then June spoke. Don't become him." Silas reached down. He pulled Pike to safety. The sheriff arrived and put Pike in irons. By sunrise, the seizure order had been suspended. The judge was facing an investigation. The sheriff agreed to testify, and the Ledgers were on their way to the territorial office. Pike's scheme unraveled quickly. He had forged the boundary survey to seize the spring before the railroad negotiations resumed. He had arranged the cattle, theft to make Elias look guilty, and ordered the barn fire to destroy the old records. The same choices that were supposed to erase his crimes became the evidence that exposed him. James Mercer was cleared of every accusation after his death. Pike was sent east to face charges for fraud, conspiracy, and murder. The railroad never built its spur through Red Mesa. June did not leave. She reopened the telegraph office and began keeping accounts for the ranch. Silas built a small room beside the house for her work. One evening, months later, he handed her a key. "What is this?" "Your office." "You built me an office?" "I got tired of watching you work at the kitchen table." She smiled. "You don't seem like a man who notices things." "I notice more than I used to." At sunset, they stood beside the spring. The water ran clear beneath the cottonwoods. June opened the silver watch. Silas had found one final inscription hidden beneath the back plate. It read, "For June. If I don't come home, trust the man who gives you the truth instead of the answer you want." Her eyes filled. "You knew about this?" "I found it after the trial." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't know if you were ready." She looked at him. "You're getting better at knowing when not to speak." Silas smiled. "And you're getting better at staying." She slipped her hand into his. There was no grand speech, no crowd, no hurried promise, just two people standing beside a spring after a long season of dust and trouble. The ranch had survived because Silas had fought for it, but it had been saved because June knew where to look when everyone else was staring at the wrong thing. The frontier taught hard lessons. A man could own 100 acres and still be poor if he trusted no one. A woman could lose almost everything and still carry enough courage to begin again. And sometimes the person who arrived asking for help was the one who had come to teach you how to live. Years later, people in Coyote Wells still told the story of the Rourke Ranch and the forged map. Some said Silas won because he was stubborn, others said June won because she was clever. The truth was simpler. They won because, when trouble came, neither chose to run. If this story stayed with you, tell me what you would have done if you were June, and let me know where you're watching from. If you enjoy heartfelt Western stories of courage, justice, and second chances, subscribe and join us for the next ride.